Alright, first problem with this video, and I'm only a few seconds in. I absolutely hate how you generalize everybody who disagrees with you as fanboys. Just because people disagree with you doesn't mean that they are fanboys of the Irate gamer. People can have legitimate issues with your arguments. And generalizing everyone who disagrees with you as fanboys does make you look stupid.
Or he could just be talking about people that vehemently defend Boars to the teeth. There's no way of telling from this sole statement that he's delusional enough to believe that every single person that disagrees with him is a fanboy, and I think it's a bit of a stretch to try to make it as such.
Which by this time is a breath of fresh air to see something different and get a break from that horrible music.
It's nice and refreshing to see a change of scenery after 4 levels of the exact same stuff.
Also, when did he ever wear that sleeveless black shirt?
Oh, a black sleeveless shirt. Shouldn't this be red?
Every single thing you can imagine is out to kill you.
Holy shit!
Bullies, hula hoop girls, killer bees, and guys holding glass windows.
Potholes, big bullies, things that look like coffee cups. What the fuck? And these 2 guys that walk back and forth carrying a plate of glass. Which seems to be...
And you gotta love that music. Sounds just like the movie, right?
No!
And that's it. It just loops over and over again.
Now, if you aren't hard of hearing, the background music of this game should be driving you to the point of insanity. Now, it's not that bad. But for starters, this music was not even in the movie. And because it's looped over...
I wish I could go back in time to prevent this game from being
made.
made.
This game is so bad, I wish I could just go back in time and stop it from ever being created.
Yes, the Irate gamer's review of Back to the Future is almost identical. There's no arguing that. However, there is a good reason for it. What you can say about the Back to the Future game on the NES is very limited. How do I know this? Because I have played the game myself. There really isn't a lot that you can say about the game. So the fact that his review is almost identical is understandable.
So the game is so limited that Chris has to resort to not only the same points, but also the same jokes, same inflections, and near similar wording as the original AVGN episode. Blaze, it's clear the guy's issues isn't with the 2 videos having similar points, but with Boars blatantly taking the points along with the jokes from James Roll's video with little to any change to them. I don't think that can immediately be blamed on the game being too limited.
What a shitload of fuck.
What a shitload of fuck!
What a shitload.
First of all, was there any need in playing those clips 3 times? And yes, the term shitload of fuck is a term that's most associated with the angry video game nerd. But it isn't exclusive to him. Why should he be the only one who is allowed to say that? There's nothing wrong with copying a term said by someone else. Because you can't own a phrase.
Even though it's a phrase that was coined and more well known by the AVGN, and it's being used by someone who has been noted to borrow lines from the AVGN, who also uses a somewhat similar persona in the reviews.
But that's not the biggest problem I have here. My biggest problem is that the Irate gamer only copied the angry video game nerd once in his Mission Impossible review. And that is the very thing. In most of his reviews, he only copies the angry video game nerd once per video. The TMNT and the Back to the Future videos are the only reviews I can think of where he doesn't. That's not plagiarism. It would be plagiarism if he did it throughout the video, but he only did it once per video. So this is really a non-issue.
Do you not know how plagiarism works? Plagiarism is, and always has been and will be, the copying of someone else's work or ideas to pass off as your own. It doesn't matter if it happens once or multiple times in one of the Irate Gamer videos. If he copies off of AVGN, then yes, it is indeed plagiarism.
I mean, instead, make way for the missile balloons, flying robot head, those little butterfly things, Mr. Fireman.
And talking about enemies, what the fuck is up with the enemy selection in this game anyway? Eyeball plants? Rocket pack flyers? Guys on fire? Do you ever remember
I'm not sure if the argument I made regarding Back to the Future applies here too, because I've never played the TMNT NES game. But there is something that I want to point out. Yes, when the Irate gamer reviews the TMNT game, he is undeniably plagiarizing the angry video game nerd. There's no arguing that. However, you can't say that the whole TMNT review is plagiarism of his. After he was done reviewing the first TMNT game, he went a step further. He reviewed other TMNT games as well. Whether the points he made about the other TMNT games are good or not is irrelevant. My point still stands.
And... okay, so Chris decided to review more than one TMNT game instead of just solely the one also reviewed on AVGN. Doesn't really change that the guy wasn't necessarily saying that Boars' whole video was ripping off the AVGN review, but just the TMNT1 segment. This is flat out damage control and nothing about it changes the original point.
absolutely right. You can't even dispute that. I mean, seriously, don't even try to argue with this point. You just dismiss it as invalid without anything to back yourself up. Now here's a challenge for you. Make a review of the Back to the Future game on the NES without bringing up any of the issues that the angry video game nerd and the Irate gamer brought up. Come on, I fucking dare you. I don't think you can do it.
Blaze, don't taunt me. I'm already desperate for video ideas. I'll even do it if somebody pays me enough. I'll be back. I need to write this down in my little idea notebook.
From what I understand, Final Fantasy II, at the time of its Japanese release, wasn't released in the US. Neither was Final Fantasy III. But Final Fantasy IV came out here, and because we didn't have 2 or 3, it wouldn't have made sense to call it 4, so what do? They call it 2. Now, Final Fantasy V wasn't released here either. So, when 6 came out, that became 3. Final Fantasy III also happens to be one of my all-time favorite games on the Super Nintendo. And I remember that after that, Squaresoft started releasing the next Final Fantasy games on PlayStation. Things changed, and now they weren't fucking with the titles anymore. So when Final Fantasy VII came out, they just called it Final Fantasy VII. And that's where the confusion began. I wondered, what the fuck happened to 4, 5, and 6? But what I really should have been wondering, little did I know, what the fuck happened to 2, 3, and 5? And once I figured that out, I was like, so there were other Final Fantasy games we didn't know about? I was playing 6 all along and not 3? What a bunch of fucking bullfuck.
Final Fantasy games are always released in Japan first, then brought over to the US later on. So when Japan got Final Fantasy, we got Final Fantasy. When they got Final Fantasy II, we got jack shit. Yep, that's right. The poor US was left out in the cold, and Japan ended up getting 5 more Final Fantasy games. And out of those titles, the US only received 2 of them. The first one was Final Fantasy IV, which ended up being renamed Final Fantasy II, and Final Fantasy VI, which also ended up being renamed Final Fantasy III. This cover-up went unnoticed for many years until Final Fantasy VII appeared on the Sony PlayStation. And it just so happens they decided to keep it named number 7 once it was released to the US. So now the cat was out of the bag, and pissed off fans everywhere gathered together, went over to the Nintendo offices, and burnt them to the ground for their treachery.
So, giving the same information to someone else is plagiarism now? I'm not sure if you know this, but you can't modify information. If something is a fact, you can't modify that fact without giving incorrect information. What the hell was Chris supposed to do? He needed to explain how the numbering is in the Final Fantasy games, since it's important for his review. So of course he had to say the same thing that James Rolfe said in another one of his videos.
I mean, he could have not used a near-identical video structure, complete with a green background in basic listing format, and therefore making it easier for people to believe he's only listing off the games because James Rolfe did it too. I'm not even saying it's necessarily bad that he's giving a brief about the Final Fantasy name changes, but if Chris did copy this from James, maybe don't make it obvious by remaking it to look nearly identical to the original material, which is what this guy's trying to get across.
Furthermore, even if providing the same information is somewhat plagiarism, it isn't. The Irate gamer's wording here is vastly different. You can make the argument that is Back to the Future for the NES review, and the first half of the TMNT review is plagiarism, and you would be right. Since what he says in those reviews is almost word for word to what James said. But that's clearly not the case here.
Yeah, no, plagiarism doesn't have to have a similar wording for it to be plagiarism. It would make sense for someone to change up the wording to their best effort to avoid being caught plagiarizing. Of course, plagiarizing isn't always seen in words. It is possible to plagiarize other means, such as a format that is pretty clearly similar to the original source.
We will be heroes. We can change the world if we try. I go where you go. Forever friends, you and I. We will be heroes. Battle Dimension Pokemon.
That's true, but you
Alright, wait a minute. So you actually acknowledge that plagiarism can be differently worded. Even though earlier in the Final Fantasy segment, one of the reasons you write off Boris plagiarizing Rolfe is because his wording is different. You cannot have it both ways, Blaze, so which one is it? You know what, I'm getting bored with this. What's his last point?
But you know what does exempt him from plagiarism? The fact that the Angry Video Gamer Show and the Irate Gamer Show are almost completely different. I mean, yes, both shows are about video games, but I can name a lot of differences between the Angry Video Game Nerd and the Irate Gamer right off the bat.
Okay, no, I'm stopping you now. Just like before, you're still using damage control instead of arguments. Just because the shows have some differences doesn't mean the guy can't call out what appears to be plagiarism. This is nothing but fluff that has nothing, I repeat, nothing to do with the original argument. I'm not going to show his reasons. He basically says that the AVGN show is more vulgar and that Irate Gamer relies more on random slapstick. After that, he gets on the guy for calling Chris Boers' fans trolls and fanboys again, then gives his final thoughts. There isn't too much to talk about in his final thoughts, but there is this one part that annoyed me.
And you know what the most pathetic part about this video is? Even people who hated the Irate Gamer back in 2007 admitted that the plagiarism is the least of his problems. So why exactly do you feel the need to prove that he's a plagiarist? That is so fucking pointless.
Or maybe not everyone who criticized the Irate Gamer is the same person with the same opinions? Just because some people thought the plagiarism wasn't as big of an issue doesn't mean others can't or won't take offense to it. Also, why is it pointless besides someone else who criticized them said it was? I mean, if someone is directly lifting ideas from someone else rather frequently with little to no recognition of such, then yeah, it's an issue, at least to me personally, of course. I even agree that Chris had other issues besides plagiarism, but that doesn't mean nobody is allowed to acknowledge the plagiarism as an issue.
Oh, looks like there's some leftover candy from this guy's house. I wonder what he's got. Huh, blue raspberry commentary material. Lick, 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 lick.
Yeah, please never do that again. Ever. Please.
So, this is a rather unusual scenario we have here. Today, I'm doing a commentary on a Halloween top 10 made by none other than famed gaming YouTuber Pro Jared. Now, I'll be honest, I actually really like Pro Jared as a content creator, and it honestly kind of hurts having to expose his mistakes, especially after what he's had to deal with IRL. But at the same time, this video really hit some of the wrong buttons for me. I mean, to be fair, I don't necessarily hate this video per se, but after watching it through a few times, I did notice a few mistakes here and there. Jared, if you're watching this, hello, I'm Blazing Lorvesta. Today, I will be providing a critique of your top 10 scariest retro enemies not from horror games list, pointing out mistakes you made in your video, and giving you advice on how to improve future works. Please note that I may make a few jokes that may come off as hurtful or insulting to you, but in the end, said jokes are purely made for entertainment purposes, and I do not actually wish any ill will towards you. With that said, I hope you enjoy my video.
Okay, the structure for this opening explanation was interesting, to say the least. Let me see if I can abridge it to give an idea.
Today, I will be commentating on video by Famous Guy. I like Famous Guy. I don't like video. I do, but it's a flawed video. Famous Guy, I will be commentating on video by you. Jokes are jokes, don't take them seriously, bro.
What I'm trying to say is that your structuring is very clunky and redundant. A lot of this felt like it could have been condensed or at least worded to sound more concise. Then there's the other bit where you sorta announce twice that you would be commentating on one of Pro Jared's videos. I could sort of see what you were going for the second time you mentioned this. In the small chance Jared sees this, you hope he won't take it as an attack. But regardless, it wasn't all that needed, and you could have made your note without it just fine. You know, I'm really glad these degree markers are on here. Didn't want to get lost in the whole 2 videos being shown.
Oh my god. Is that? No! It can't be! Off-screen footage?! Ah! Jeez, that scene of off-screen footage really hurt my eyes. Ow!
Well, that happened, and I genuinely don't know what to say. I'm not 100% sure if this was supposed to be a point or a joke. It's so out there and doesn't outright seem as if it's genuinely trying to drive that the on-screen footage is actually that bad. Regardless of that, I would still at least note how the recorded screen isn't even that bright or drastic in appearance. This is also ignoring that the way it was recorded appears to be intentional, to show him playing a horror game in a dark room in order to give a creepy feeling in order to open the Halloween video. So as a point, this is an issue, and as a joke, the exaggeration falls flat because of this.
I can only name a handful of horror games that have genuinely terrified me over the years. Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, PT. But you know what was way scarier? Pixels. None of this polygon back when imagination was used to fill the void, and it was gruesome.
You say? As you cite 2 polygon-based games and no pixel games that scared you? Double standards are the best!
That's not a double standard, Larva Boy. He only cited those games as the 2 actual horror games that genuinely scared him. Just because most didn't scare him doesn't mean a few won't succeed. Plus, what would listing pixel games by comparison prove? He's literally making a list of these games that did scare him. Sit down, please. Alongside this, he's specifically talking about non-horror retro games, and outright comparing those to actual horror games would just be jarring.
Bubble Bobble is one of the cutest games ever made. You play as a cute little dragon, all the enemies are adorable, you spit bubbles, and when the enemies pop, they become delicious food. Seriously, everything about this game is adorable and cutesy. How can it be spooky?
Everything in this cutesy game is just so cute and adorable, which is why I'm placing an enemy friend this game on a scariest enemies list.
Yeah, next time you might want to word your sentences better, just a suggestion.
Bad wording? How is that bad wording? All he said was that the game was cutesy, which, by the way, half of which was exaggeration. Very over the top and obvious exaggeration at that, which he was using to break into his actual reasoning. With this, I also want to add that just because something is cutesy doesn't mean it can't be creepy or scary. I say this because there's more to the entry than you let on, and you basically cut him off halfway through before he actually starts explaining his reasoning.
Seriously, everything about this game is adorable and cutesy. How can it be spooky? Easy, run out of time. Few things boost the anxiety like making the music go way faster. Also, having every single enemy go apeshit makes things worse. So now you're panicking trying to get all these dudes popped because the game's pressuring you. But that's not the scary part. The scary part is if you still take too long, suddenly you'll see this guy, Baron von Blubba. Now you've got an unkillable ghost whale chasing you down while the game is telling you to hurry and while enemies are going super fast for even more pressure. And if you still take too long, he starts moving twice as fast, matching everything else that's going on. You got these weird floaty controls and his glowing red eye is staring you down. There's nothing you can do to stop him!
Once more, if I may, where in any of this does his bad wording damage anything he says? Short answer, it doesn't. Second answer, listen to what your opponent is saying before you open your mouth.
Also, a production issue that absolutely plagues this video, blatant black borders.
I come back from almost a year of inactivity to this of all things. This is gonna be a bumpy ride.
Now, those of you who have been with the CC for a while now may remember a hashtag called #BlackBordersMatter, which is a suggestion to content creators to remove black borders to make their videos more appealing. I bring this up as Jared here doesn't even try to hide his blatant black borders, given that his intro skit, number transition, and zoomed in gameplay all filled the entire screen. Look, Jared, I get that you want to show your gameplay in the original resolution, but in that case, put a background over your footage, like this. See? Instant pretty!
Alright, I guess you're not technically wrong, although if it was me doing this video, I personally wouldn't care, but I do have a small quip here. Maybe just me, but it probably would have been better to either show a different game he talked about, or wait until a new entry to discuss this, especially since Bubble Bobble for the most part has a black background, which actually blends in well with the black borders. If you showed it during a game with a bit more color, it would give a much better picture onto how the borders are jarring and how a background would make them look better. Again, maybe just me, but I felt the point might be a bit stronger with that. And finally, can we please move on to the next argument? I'm starting to get hives.
Biggest piece of shit on the entire Earth.
Zombies Ate My Neighbors is filled with scary monsters. I mean, the whole game is making numerous horror movies come to life. You got the typical zombies and mummies.
Oh, so this segment is on the zombies and mummies. Not exactly the kind of enemies I would expect on this list, but whatever.
Forget about them.
Oh, a fake out. Kind of predictable, but oh well. Let's see the actual candidate.
The chainsaw-wielding maniacs chase you down. If you knock them over, they'll get right back up again. We'll cut through walls when you think you're safe.
Ah, it's on the chainsaw enemies. Well, let's see what you have to say about them.
Nah, forget about them.
Wait, another fake out? Okay, who is it really on? I'm starting to get a little impatient.
The axe-wielding baby is vicious, slicing you up, and once you think you've defeated him, he bursts into flames and continues to attack in a horrific fiery onslaught.
Oh, it's on the axe-wielding kid.
Okay, I think we get the point. You don't like the fake-outs. Even if I could give you credit and say it was either dragged out too long or poorly written, you're not making it any more pleasant to watch by cutting in every 5 to 10-ish seconds to make the same 2 clips for close to the next minute. It's more obnoxious than funny and drags it out even longer than before. Plus, this joke could have worked if it had a bit more wit to it instead of just having each additional part be a cardboard copy of the original joke. And he does one more cut of the joke, so I'm just going to go to the real entry.
Scariest enemy in Zombies Ate My Neighbors is a baby.
Oh, so it's on the giant baby. Well, that took longer than it should have.
The worst part is to finish this stage, you have to kill him.
Oh no! This boss fight is scary because we have to kill it to beat the stage!
Sorry, Jared, but did you even think this line through? By the logic you put in this line, almost every boss fight in existence should be on this list.
No, it's not. His point was that the boss is a baby that you're forced to kill, which without context and a bit of twisted imagination, yeah, that can be considered sorta dark. Maybe even a slight bit scary, if I can.
And some dickwad night elf starts being a complete dickwad douchebag to you.
Ever play Ski Free? This game was pretty much on every Windows machine in the early 90s. It was so relaxing. You ski downhill on one of 3 different horses. It was just super pleasant. You're feeling the fresh, cool air in your face, hitting other people, and doing sick jumps into dope flips for mad points. This was the ultimate wind-down game for Windows users long before— Ah, what the— No!
Okay, what makes this Yeti enemy scary? Honestly, Jared, making a Speaks for Itself segment like this is probably the laziest thing you can do in a countdown. Segments like these don't explain why a segment is on a countdown, leaving viewers confused as to what in the world happened.
Not always, it just depends on if it can be written well and you don't have too much easy to miss information floating around. And in this case, it's not really too bad. The Yeti comes out of nowhere, chases you fast and frantically, and can eat you in a game that's otherwise peaceful, which could come off as startling or unnerving to unsuspecting players. That was extremely easy to get from the footage shown and the way he described it.
Not only that, but in this case, the footage you show really doesn't do a good job at explaining why the Yeti is scary either.
Pops up out of nowhere, chases you, eats you. Wazza!
As it just shows the monster, who looks like something straight out of a 3-year-old's drawing no less, chasing after your character and gobbling them up. And while yes, that is admittedly a little unnerving, the footage shown just makes the Yeti come off as a random jump scare.
So, exactly what he was conveying. And exactly what I just said. So, why am I still doing this again?
Patrick Stewart comes out of nowhere telling you that he has wet dreams about you, that sick little creep.
There is one enemy that scared the deepest out of me the first time I saw it. It stuck with me to this day. She starts showing up on the 3rd level of the dungeon. It's a ghost, but a lady ghost, with a rather pretty face floating there quite calmly, until— that's the face that got me so hard. I was lulled into a false sense of security, and then— Alright, well, if that doesn't scare you, maybe this will. If you want to continue your game, it takes 5 separate passwords. Woo!
Nobody cares! Nobody!
Okay, in all seriousness though, that came completely out of nowhere. If that was meant to be a joke, it's a rather weak joke, as it has absolutely nothing to do with this segment's candidate, the Ghost Lady, and just serves as a mindless distraction that really shouldn't have been included in this segment.
Because, you know, humor sucks. Blah. Though seriously, I don't really see the issue here. He gave his entry and gave a goofy insight regarding the game the enemy comes from in order to close out the entry. Sure, it doesn't entirely have to do with the enemy, but it does have to do with the original game, along with it not overly dragging out. So I don't see why he needs to be crucified over this minuscule detail of the joke.
Oh, but you see, the 5 passwords were the candidate for this segment.
It wasn't. I know it, you might know it.
Though to be fair, I seriously doubt it is.
And I have enough faith in humanity to say that others do as well. Again, it's pretty obvious he was just being hyperbolic considering he just finished talking about an actual enemy that actually scared him, and it clearly wasn't a fake out like the Zombies Ate My Neighbors entry.
Oh, guess what? Kvatch has been under attack by a bunch of gooby monsters. Oh no. Oh.
That being said, before I end this video, I did have one thing to say about part of his closing dialogue.
Oh, I forgot the Vengeance Ghost from Daggerfall.
No, Jared, you didn't forget about the Vengeance Ghost. You deliberately left it out for the signature end skit.
I never would have guessed. This man is a prophet sent by God himself.
If you really did want to talk about the enemy, why didn't you include it on the list, or at the very least put it as an honorable mention?
Because he was using the Vengeance Ghost as a way to note there are likely more sprite enemies that unnerved him that didn't make the list, and to open conversation on his video as seen here.
Oh, I forgot the Vengeance Ghost from Daggerfall. Dang it. Well, I'm sure there's plenty of other ones that I missed, and if there's anything that you can think of, please let me know in the comments down below.
For the love of, you even acknowledge that it's for the end skit, so why are you getting so worked up about it?
Not only that, but Elder Scrolls 2, the game the Vengeance Ghost originated from, is a polygon-based game.
No, it's not. Yeah, it has 3D environments, but the character models in the game are made up of 2D sprites. similar to Doom or Wolfenstein 3D. Also, yes, some of the cutscenes do appear to be modeled with CGI, but the actual game for the most part is still sprite-based.
Everyone knows what a Pokemon ability is, right? It provides some sort of help to the Pokemon in or outside of battle, and almost every Pokemon has 1 or 2 normal abilities and 1 hidden ability. Now with that said, not every ability is useful to its Pokemon, and some are just so bad that they make the Pokemon completely useless, so today we're going to be looking at 10 of the worst Pokemon abilities we can find. Before I start, keep in mind that this list contains abilities that are exclusive to some Pokemon, maybe 1 or 2, and they're all just based around my opinion, so if you guys disagree or feel that just narrowing it down to exclusive abilities isn't nice, of course make sure you guys leave your own list down below in the comment section. But with that being said, let's get started.
Why does it take 7 seconds to fade in? You kinda lack an introduction, so we only really know who you are and what you're doing here thanks to your username. We just kinda get thrown into the video with no context. Also, completely useless? Every ability has a use. Sure, it's easier to find worth in some abilities compared to others, but just because in some abilities it's hard to find a use, that doesn't mean it's useless.
Maybe just a me thing, but he said the abilities in question could make the Pokemon that holds it useless. Not that the abilities themselves are useless, more implying that the abilities could work against the Pokemon rather than benefit it. Sure, each ability has a use of some sort, but he was instead trying to say that those specific uses aren't always going to have promising results.
Starting off the list, we have the ability Illuminate. So unless you actually want to run into a lot of wild Pokemon, this ability completely sucks. If you forgot to stock up on repels when you're entering a route and have a Pokemon that leads your party with the ability Illuminate, the rate at which you encounter Pokemon is increased by 100%.
This is why you check your bag in advance to check for repels or buy more before heading off if you don't want to worry about running into wild mons. Or if you can, stay out of the grass in the first place.
Why, thank you for this enlightening and eye-opening statement that has opened the eyes of, like, 3 people. If that. But for real, Gale, what does this add? You could say that he was implying that it was important to stock up on repels if you have a Pokemon with Illuminate by mentioning it in the first place. Popping up to say, well then, you should stock up on repels then, hee-ho, doesn't do much, if anything.
That is crazy considering me, personally, I hate running into wild Pokemon non-stop, leaving this ability at least at number 10 because you can always stock up on repels and it doesn't really sound that bad.
Illuminate only takes effect when the Pokemon with the ability is in the front of your party. So here's a crazy idea, Relic Boy! Switch your team around! Secondly, let's have a look at the list of Pokemon that can have this ability that you show, shall we? Volbeat, Watchog, the Staryu line, the Chinchou line, and Morlul. All of these Pokemon have alternate abilities, so it's not like you're restricted to Illuminate or anything.
Neat. Good thing he's talking about Illuminate and not the Pokemon that can possess Illuminate. Doesn't matter if they can have a different ability, it doesn't change that he has gripes with this specific ability. Like, you started off with a good point, then you had to go and tack this on for, to be blunt, absolutely no reason.
You know, there are situations in which Illuminate is actually quite useful. I know he said at the start of the entry, quote, unless you actually want to run into a lot of wild Pokemon, end quote, but the way he said that gives off the impression that he doesn't seem to know why people would want to do that.
I'm sorry? How? All I heard him say was...
So unless you actually want to run into a lot of wild Pokemon...
He doesn't talk down to anyone that wants to run into wild Pokemon. He doesn't sound oblivious to wanting to run into wild Pokemon. He just notes it on the side and goes on his way. And if there's something I'm actually missing, then that's on you for not even bothering to go in a bit deeper and actually show how he's showing ignorance in this.
Next up at number 9, we have the ability Leaf Guard. Now when it comes to this ability, for me personally, it just goes kind of 50-50, but basically what it does is when the sun is up, a Pokemon with Leaf Guard cannot be inflicted with status conditions, so it can be paralyzed, it can be burned, or put to sleep, and so on. But if you don't have the move Sunny Day or another Pokemon with Drought, the ability just becomes completely useless. And even if you do have Sunny Day, why would you go for it instead of going for another move that will make your Pokemon's stats more powerful?
What, you mean like the Rest Belly Drum combo? You do realize that the combo to better the status conditions and stats of that one Pokemon takes up half of the Pokemon's moveset, right?
Okay, let's just full on stop here, because this is just amazing. So you don't even know what he's talking about, so you pull some random move combo out of nowhere just to go on a tangent about it? For all you know, he might not even be talking about the Rest Belly Drum combo, yet here we are right now talking about some random set of moves that weren't even a part of the argument in the first place. Also, from the way he said it, it seems he meant that he would rather use stat-changing moves rather than waste a move slot on Sunny Day. He never even mentions combos or strategies, just that he'd rather fill up an extra move slot with a stat-boosting move rather than Sunny Day. So it seems to make more sense to think he's just talking about general stat-boosting moves.
Also, you're missing the point of what makes Leaf Guard work in Sunny Day teams. Yes, without Sunny Day it is useless, but there is a reason you see it in Sunny Day teams. Teamwork. It's that potential for team synergy that makes it stand out. Leaf Guard, due to nullifying the potential for status conditions such as paralysis to be inflicted, allow those mons to support their team members better. Here's another thing. If you take a closer look, you'll notice that quite a few of those Leaf Guard mons have access to some unique and powerful support moves. In particular, Irate, Tsarina, Jumpluff, Roselia, and Meganium all have access to aromatherapy. Meganium in particular stands out due to its status as the grass-type starter, less known for offense and more known for support. Now, some of you may think that due to Leaf Guard preventing the Pokemon from being inflicted with status conditions in sunny weather, that it brings down the usefulness of aromatherapy. That is not the case. One, that's assuming that sunny weather teams will be able to keep up the sunny weather all the time. Two, aromatherapy is used more to heal the status conditions of the rest of the party, not the one using the move. That's why the move only has 5 PP. It may depend on how dedicated to support you want said support mon to be, but Leaf Guard can be a really good ability in a sunny weather team if you use it right.
I mean, this is good and all, but aromatherapy is still only used by a small fraction of the Pokemon that have Leaf Guard. I get what you're trying to say, but this could have worked much better if you were to give a small sample of different support moves that could be used by different Leaf Guard mons, rather than an essay on how aromatherapy is the best thing since 420. Even with that, does the ability work well with physical mons? Because that would be good too. Just because a Pokemon can gain an advantage of an ability thanks to one move, doesn't mean the ability still can't come off as a hindrance to others.
And finally, how do stat-altering moves and abilities make this ability bad?
They don't? He never even said that. All he said was that he preferred to teach Pokemon stat-changing moves rather than Sunny Day. Not once did he imply that stat-changing moves on their own made Leaf Guard bad. You two are looking way too deep into such a small statement for issues.
This one is where the bullshit starts. This ability is only available to Arceus and Arceus, but in the number 7 spot, we have the ability Defeatist, which basically lowers Arceus and Arceus' attack and special attack in half when its HP is below 50%. It's basically a pile of garbage if you can't take out the other Pokemon before that happens, or unless you have a Citrus Berry on it to save the day, you're just gonna be stuck with a weak mon at lower than half health.
Citrus Berry? Teach it Roost. That move recovers half its health every time it's used, so when it's at just over half, it's right back at full. Also, if the mon that Arceus is going up against is that much of a threat, there's another solution. Just switch it out.
Aesop's very compelling argument over here has left me speechless. Nothing I can do, guys. Seriously now, literally none of this debunks what he said. He gives how an ability genuinely cripples a Pokemon, and you just nitpick how he heals it and say, oh, just switch it out. If anything, the fact that he has to switch it out now, thanks to its Gimp stats, furthers his point that, yeah, this ability is a hindrance rather than beneficial.
Speaking of being useless, number 6 is the ability Plus and Minus. Yes, we're gonna share those two because they work the same way in a sense. Now, if a Pokemon has the ability Plus, he powers up the special attack of a Pokemon that has the Minus ability, and the other way around.
Completely forgetting the fact that Gen 5 added the double positive and double negative effects in an attempt to boost both abilities. It shows it right in your screen caps.
So that means that it only works in double battles. You're probably gonna need 2 electric types because they're the only types that can have this ability. And let's just take a moment to realize that most of the game are in single battles. So in a nutshell, the ability sucks unless you're willing to capture 2 electric types with those abilities for just a couple of double battles.
You might want to recheck that list of yours again, Relic. The Clink line is a pure steel type, so, congrats, you just lied to your audience.
Or he just messed up on his information? Yes, he's wrong on this. Yes, he should be more careful with his information. But it's a bit of a stretch to say he went out of his way to lie about one Pokemon line's typing for a group of abilities that are still primarily used by electric types.
As for your single-player or campaign argument, places like the Battle Subway, several trainer double battles, and the Pokemon World Tournament poke holes here.
The Battle Subway and World Tournament are optional side parts of the game, and double battles are still much less common than single trainer battles. The fact that he says most of the game makes me want to think he's talking about the main story, which, yeah, generally has more single than double battles. He's not wrong with this. The fact that one-off battle facilities exist, and once-in-a-blue-moon double battles happen, doesn't change that the game still primarily uses single battles. He also goes on to mention the double wild Pokemon battles and the darker grass patches in the Gen 5 games, but this still hinges on the points I mentioned.
at number 5 is the ability Slow Start, which is exclusive to Regigigas. Slow Start halves the attack and speed of Regigigas for 5 turns. The idea of a Pokemon being legendary is supposed to be because it's strong, but with the ability Slow Start, you can probably just kill Regigigas in an instant, and heck, when you encounter it in Pokemon Platinum, it's level 1, so you're gonna need to use False Swipe to try and catch it, but that's not the issue here.
Why did you bring it up?
To give his audience an idea of what the ability does, while giving an idea of why people could have problems with it. Just because he has one major issue doesn't mean he can't take the time to discuss a minor one as well.
Considering Regigigas is a legendary Pokemon, the ability Slow Start just makes it so unfair for it compared to the other legendaries.
This is why the competitive players who use Regigigas in the low tier teach it Thunder Wave. Regigigas spends the first 5 turns with its attack and speed cut in half, while the opponent's paralysis leaves its speed cut by 75% pre-Gen 7, along with a 25% chance of not being able to move at all, and that paralysis lasts until that condition is healed. Who do you think is better off?
Okay, cool. But the ability is still a handicap, as he said, and having to teach a status move to compensate for it only furthers this.
Although I understand it's been in a long slumber and you had to collect all the Regis for it, but Slow Start for our legendary Pokemon like Regigigas really seems unfair, making it at number 5 today.
You just brought up why it works in flavor. Mechanically, yes, it's a huge nerf.
Yes, exactly! Thank you! He never said that all these abilities have absolutely no workarounds like you keep trying to talk about. He's only describing how they can nerf the Pokemon.
But I brought up how competitive players try to work around it, and you brought up how it fits in flavor, so what's the problem?
Now on to the main point, it works with the lore in the game. Okay, that's cute and all, but that doesn't change that the ability causes a huge hindrance every time you send it out, nor should it be an excuse to do so. Which I should also clarify, yes, Slow Start resets if you ever switch Regigigas out of battle, which could also add to how the ability can be seen as an annoyance.
The next ability is another exclusive one, this time to Skitty and Delcatty, with a little bit of benefits, but at the same time, it doesn't really help out as much. Number 4, we have Normalize, which literally turns every move into a normal type attack. So if you have Thunderbolt, it's a normal type. Ice Beam, it's also a normal type. Now I'm gonna admit it, it's good if you're gonna have something like Thunder Wave, because you'll be able to paralyze ground type Pokemon.
And you just brought up the saving point of Normalize. What exactly makes it bad again?
Christ, I don't know. It's almost like things can have both advantages and shortcomings or something.
But at the same time, you can't hit it on a Ghost type because they're gonna be immune.
Unless Foresight or Odor Sleuth was used on said Ghost type in advance. Skitty can learn Foresight via level up,
thus allowing the Skitty line to rain down destruction on the Ghost type in any way it pleases. Nice try, buddy, but we're wise to your game.
No. I don't think it's as easy as you two are making it out to be. First off, the fact that you have to use Foresight to begin with could easily give away to the opponent that something may be up, in which they could either switch Pokemon if possible, or try to get 1 or 2 good hits onto the Skitty, which mixed with the lines for stats could end up killing it if you're unlucky, and ultimately ruining your foolproof and amazing plan.
Now the stab is great and all of that, but Delcatty actually needs a coverage of moves because its stats suck. So having a lot of normal type moves doesn't really help it out.
so use it as a support mon. It's true that you'd only get real use out of Thunder Wave that way, but Foresight can allow it to hit every type of Pokemon except for Electric, and that's from Gen 6 on. And for the Electric Mons, there's Attract. It may only work on those who have the opposite gender, but there's a coin flip's chance of the opponent not being able to move.
Although it's even worse than Thunder Wave because of it not only working only on the opposite gender, but the fact that it also wears off either on its own or if the Pokemon is switched out, something Paralysis does not.
And you can use this to your advantage to attack that mon. Return's probably your best bet. There's also Giga Impact, but it's more risky to use. For the mons that can't be attracted, it should go without saying that you should switch out. You know what? This sounds less like you're complaining about the Normalize ability itself, and more like you're complaining about the fact that only the Skitty evolution line got the Normalize ability.
How? Because he mentioned the Skitty line's poor stats? Because he only mentioned that because he feels it needs a larger type variety in place of the poor stats. The fact that he initially said that the ability doesn't work well with ghosts, and that he in general hates what the ability does, should say that yes, he doesn't like Normalize itself.
Coming in at number 2 today, we have the Moody ability.
Moody? Moody, as in one of the few abilities that has been banned from competitive play? Enlighten me.
Moody increases a random stat by 2 stages and lowers another random stat by 1. Let's say you're a physical attacker with Moody and keep getting your defense or any other stat that you really don't need raised and your attack or speed lowered. Obviously that's not going to be a good time. I get that the stat you prefer may get raised, but it's random every turn and it might get lowered the next time. So having Moody is just really luck based, and that's why it's so high up on the list at number 2 today.
Should I say it or should you?
Let's both say it.
You're basing your entire argument on a hypothetical
when Moody is completely randomized.
Oh, sweet Jesus almighty. First off the bat, that doesn't mean the ability can't become a hindrance. That doesn't mean he can't find the ability annoying. Second, you yourselves have also been using hypotheticals throughout the video to try to debunk him, particularly in the Klutz segment I skipped.
Like, say you have a Klutz Golurk holding a black sludge against a Heat Rotom with Flame Orb. A typical strategy with Heat Rotom is to trick a Flame Orb onto the opponent. Now, let's say that Heat Rotom uses Trick. The black sludge gives chip damage to any Pokemon holding it that isn't poison type. So, the Heat Rotom will receive chip damage from the black sludge, and the Golurk will receive no burn status due to the Klutz ability preventing the Flame Orb from taking effect.
Even with this, in his case, he more often than not has been using broad examples that could cover the general game for his reasoning, while you two keep using extremely specific strategies and move pools, mostly used in competitive play, as the end-all be-all of why he's wrong with his reasoning. This constant problem of yours is why I ended up skipping some segments in their entirety, because I don't want to harp on this issue constantly. So I admit I don't have much else to say. They talk about his number 1 segment, which is about Darmanitan's Zen mode, and overall the points they made were alright. Not much I can say about that. Okay, enough of that noise, let's move on.
Starting things off and claiming the number 5 spot in today's top 5 video is Golisopod. Golisopod is a large, menacing arthropod Pokemon in a hunched over humanoid posture. It has a light purplish inner body generously armored with a silvery exoskeleton. Golisopod's bright purple antennae converge with its mouthparts on the front of its relatively small head, forming a sort of mask between its 2 eyes. Golisopod is a dual typing of water and bug, and I can see why its pre-evolution Wimpod has this typing, but Golisopod is said to be based on the giant isopod with the armor of a samurai.
Well, yeah, giant isopods are more often than not found in the depths of the ocean, along with Golisopod's Pokédex entry stating that it lives in similar areas to its real-life counterpart. Granted, there are isopods that do live on land, such as the woodlouse, but the giant isopod is an ocean-dwelling creature and does not fall into that category. Also, the armor of a samurai thing seems more to demonstrate how strong Golisopod's armor is, but we still have a bit more regarding the samurai motif, so let's hear him out.
The armor of a samurai particularly jumps out at me, and because of this, I feel that this new Pokemon should have been a dual typing of Bug and Dark, seeing as there's not really any correlation between a samurai and water. This typing would have made more sense to seeing as Golisopod can already learn a handful of Dark type moves, such as Sucker Punch, Fling, Payback, Taunt, Snarl, and Dark Pulse. I really do think that a dual typing of Bug and Dark would have been really cool to see on this Pokemon.
That's kinda broad. So basically it should be Dark because Samurai, lol funny meme, and it knows a few Dark type moves. Okay, first, how does Samurai directly lead to Dark? You never give anything further on this. Second, this could be easily stretched and used when talking about other types of moves Golisopod learns. For example, it learns quite a few fighting moves and Samurai Spite, so by that logic shouldn't it be a fighting type? Personally, I still think its original typing is fine, but I'm honestly confused on, out of all possibilities, why you specifically chose Dark. With other potential typings, it'd at least be good to elaborate on why you think it should be Bug Dark specifically.
Coming in at the number 4 spot in today's top 5 video is Lurantis. Lurantis is an insectoid Pokemon with some plant-like features. The top half of its head is pink, while the bottom half is white. It has light red eyes and 2 green antennae with a small green lump between them. There are 4 extensions to the top half of its head, 2 on the top with red tips that resemble ears, and 1 on each side with white tips that are similar to stylized hair. Now, Lurantis is a pure grass-type Pokemon, and I really cannot see why. It is based off an orchid mantis, so why is this Pokemon not a bug-type when it's literally an insect? Lurantis even gets access to a bunch of bug-type moves, such as Leech Life, X-Scissor, and Fury Cutter.
Yeah, a bunch of bug-type moves. Even though those are the only 3 bug-type moves it learns. Oh dear.
But that's not even the main problem. Its design even looks like a bug too. There's so many similarities between this Pokemon and an insect that I can't really see any reason why Game Freak decided to go with a grass typing for this Pokemon instead. It really boggles my mind.
It's a strange concept, I agree with you that much, but it's not as convoluted as you're making it out to be. For First off, yes, there is inspiration of the Orchid Mantis, but let's look at Lurantis' pre-evolution Foe Mantis, whose name is derived from the word foe, as in false, and mantis. Basically, the line is meant to be a silly twist of its real-life counterpart, but instead of an animal that looks like a plant, you're getting a plant that looks like an animal. Kinda similar to how Sudowoodo imitates a tree despite it being made of rock. Also, while this is more of a side tangent, another reason why Lurantis might not be a dual grass bug is because it could severely cripple it type-wise. First off, both grass and bug share the same common weaknesses of fire and flying, which the grass bug typing would have made Lurantis 4 times weak to those types as opposed to the normal 2 times. Also, it would not negate other existing weaknesses like poison or ice, and would possibly add a weakness to rock, which without bug type, Lurantis would more than likely have a good advantage against. Granted, it's still a grass type, but the problem still lies. Looking at this, I think it'd be better if Lurantis stayed a fake ironic mantis flower creature.
I was recording that for my ringtone, god damn it!
Now, believe it or not, but this Pokemon is actually a dual typing of Poison and Rock. Yes, you heard it, Poison and Rock. This jellyfish is Poison and Rock. Fair enough, I get where the Poison type comes from, seeing as some jellyfish have millions of very small stinging cells in their tentacles called nematocysts. These cells are used to capture food by injecting toxin into the prey. But the Rock type? Surely it would have made much more sense for Game Freak to make this Pokemon a dual typing of Water and Poison instead. You know, since jellyfish actually live in water.
You know, except Neoligo's not meant to be a normal jellyfish. But onto the point, its body, particularly the hat area, has a glassy appearance and a somewhat gem or jewel-like appearance to it, which could be where the rock typing comes from. Alongside this, one of the rock type moves Neoligo can learn is Power Gem, which kinda supports this idea. Also, going back to my original note regarding this segment, another possible reason why Neoligo is the way it is to show how the Ultra Beasts are not like normal Pokemon, seeing how Neoligo is the first Ultra Beast you see in the game, and shows you how these Pokemon are more otherworldly and do not fit well with normal logic.
Coming at the number 2 spot in today's top 5 video, we have another Ultra Beast, Pheromosa. Pheromosa is an Ultra Beast mostly resembling an anthropomorphic feminine cockroach. It has a thin build and is mostly white. It has a segmented body having 5 segments dividing its torso. Pheromosa has a long and narrow neck and a small semicircular face. It has narrow white eyes with a purple iris and blue pupils. Pheromosa has long, thin legs suited for running and kicking, with golden pads at the joints. Its feet consist of 2 twin-like structures, rather resembling high heel shoes. Now, just like Buzzwole, Pheromosa is a dual typing of bug and fighting. And fair enough, I can see why Buzzwole has this typing. It's buff as hell. But Pheromosa? I understand the bug typing, seeing as it's based off a feminine cockroach, but this Pokemon doesn't really strike me as the fighting type. To me, a much more suitable typing for this Pokemon would have been a dual typing of Bug and Fairy.
Despite it not learning a single Fairy move.
Or Bug and Psychic.
Despite the only Psychic moves it learns being Agility and Speed Swap, both being stat-changing moves revolving around speed, along with it learning Rest via TM.
Especially because this Pokemon's design is tailored much more to these typings, instead of the bug and fighting that it actually got.
Okay, now that that's finished, allow me to look into all of this and make the point I've been wanting to make. For starters, let's look at Pheromosa compared to Buzzwole. Ignoring that they're both insects and contrast masculine and feminine, what are the most defining features of these two Pokemon? For Buzzwole, obviously its muscular arms good for punching and throwing. For Pheromosa, well, you said it yourself in your own video.
Pheromosa has long, thin legs suited for running and kicking, with golden pads at the joints.
How did you let that slide? Adding on to this, most of the fighting moves that Pheromosa learns naturally are attacks that are based on kicking, along with it learning the attack Low Sweep via TM. Again, all of this goes back to it being the exact opposite of Buzzwole, and it in some way makes sense if you look at it from this concept.
Hello Internet, welcome to Film Theory, where today, after 4 long years, we finally give this channel its rite of passage, a video dedicated to Sonic Speed. You see, the first really big video that I ever did here on YouTube was over on the sister channel Game Theory, and was one dedicated to calculating Sonic's speed across his games. It was my first video to ever cross 100,000 views, in fact. And when I found him to just be a wee bit slower than the games advertise, it caught everyone by surprise and made a decent number of people angry.
Well, that could be because you compared an 8-bit character from 1985 to a 16-bit character from 1991, who each run on a different console with different processing speed and power, but I'm sure that's not it.
Hi, I don't normally watch MatPat, nor do I really care about him. What do you mean by this? Was there any large backlash from him comparing the speeds between Mario and Sonic? I don't know, and you sure don't bother to show it.
But today, I've got something that's maybe even more shocking. Say what you will about the Sonic movie's character design, like the fact that he looks like a grown man in a furry Halloween costume, or the fact that Sonic's teeth are literal nightmare fuel, or the fact that when you freeze it on this particular frame, it looks like he has a goatee, which is something that you can never unsee after this moment.
Gee, thanks, MatPat. That's exactly what I needed. Okay, yes, I know I'm being a bit nitpicky here, but as a massive Sonic fan, I do have things to say about his statements later on.
Yeah, cool, I was starting to worry that the rest of the video would be one-off quips like this. Also, what exactly are you nitpicking? The joke where he said that Sonic looked like he has a goatee? Honestly, I would have taken your response as a poorly delivered joke, but then you turn around and call it a nitpick. So, what's your point here?
But today, I'm also going to prove to you that for as much as they got wrong in this trailer, there is one thing that they got absolutely right.
Oh, you mean Jim Carrey as Robotnik?
This is the single most accurate Sonic that we have ever seen.
Compared to what? As of this recording, Sonic has had 6 different iterations, not including super forms or exclusive forms of certain games like the Werehog, as well as different voice actors. 7 if you count the as-of-yet unreleased redesign for the movie. Which Sonic are you comparing this to?
I think he just means that this specific Sonic is the most accurate in general to how he's hyped up to regarding how fast he can go. He's not comparing him to any specific Sonic era, at least directly.
Don't believe me? Stick around and get ready to be convinced. Now, while you, internet, watched that trailer one time and then immediately went to bleach your brain, I have watched it no less than 50 times. And
Okay, I know you say that you slow it down to frame by frame, but what does that have to do with anything?
Nothing. It was just an exaggerated joke.
how the electricity that Sonic generates just kinda appears everywhere for some reason. That it's not necessarily tied to the location that he just traveled through.
Okay, you could make the argument that Sonic is generating static electricity by moving as fast as he does. Hell, in the trailer we see worn out shoes in piles.
Which is without a doubt from electricity and totally not from wearing them out by running. Though seriously, these sneakers look to just be worn out from use. Nothing from the way they look really suggests electrical damage.
It's possible that Sonic moves so fast he is generating electricity by pure friction with the ground instead of fire.
No. I'm positive this isn't how it works. What I think you're trying to refer to is charging by friction, where 2 objects, say for example a balloon and someone's hair, are rubbed together for a prolonged period of time, and the separation of the 2 objects would create an electrical charge. However, nothing in the trailer shows this is the case. Before Sonic starts running, he does some brief stretches, then gets in a stance, then just starts crackling for no reason. He isn't shown rubbing against the ground in any way, therefore, this isn't friction. The same could be said for later in the trailer where he jumps off the truck, automatically crackling despite likely not being able to pull any of this off. Nothing is shown that confirms this. If anything, it shows the opposite.
Anyway, what I learned the most about was his speed. You see, Sonic demonstrates a lot of different speeds throughout this trailer. At the very beginning, he clocks in at a whopping 760 miles per hour on the sheriff's dash-mounted radar gun. Given credit where credit's due, this is actually a pretty cool Easter egg, since Sonic is known for rolling around at the speed of sound, and the speed of sound is 767 miles per hour. So
Even though in your Sonic theory you made a point that he was moving far slower than that, but please, continue.
Which is why he's talking about how this Sonic in the movie is the most accurate to how he's described, while the ones in the games, at least according to MatPat, move much slower and do not meet this criteria. There's no contradiction. Move along now.
he is in this scene rolling around at the speed of sound. So the movie got that fact about Sonic totally right and got everything else in this scene totally wrong. You see, Sonic running past a radar gun like that probably wouldn't return a speed reading at all. Speed guns shoot radio waves forward, which bounce off the target and back at the gun. Since Sonic is moving away from the gun, those bounce back waves would get stretched out. If Sonic was approaching the gun, those waves would have gotten compressed. This is called the Doppler effect.
And you got this information where?
This right here is a very good call, because I too hate it when people make loaded statements without the information to back it up. It's a fantastic idea you called him out on this.
Oh wait, he's actually started listing his sources. Damn!
What the fuck was that? Holy shit!
I was gonna bring up that MatPat has a bad habit of talking about science but never provided links to his sources. Seems he's finally learned his lesson about that.
Okay, so let me see if I'm hearing this correctly. You acted as if you were going to make a point, only to acknowledge that said issue was already solved beforehand? It's not even like you were making a joke, you just stopped to take close to 20 seconds to say this for pretty much no reason whatsoever.
In measuring the distance between the marks on the road, we can actually calculate what speed he's traveling prior to erupting into that massive explosion. Now, if you were to guess, if I were to ask you right now, how long is each individual dashed center line on the highway, what would you say? Think about that.
Well, those dashes tend to vary based on the size of the road and where it is located. For example, in a turn lane, those dashes could be very close together, while on a highway, they could be seen as longer and farther apart. You did clarify the highway, but again, the road we see in the movie doesn't look like a highway. At least not to me.
So I decided to look into highway diagrams real quick, and I want to assume you're talking about something similar to this. Just a note, it'd be a good idea if you provided something so that those watching can be on the same page. In fact, let me see your source. Oh no. So it's bad enough you say it's good that MatPat cites his sources, but then you go on to make loaded statements and not have anything to back you up. I get this was likely something you stated from personal experience, which is already a bad idea if you don't have anything to support it, but all the same, you should at least have a site, chart, something to help back up your claim. Oh, and finally, highway is just the general term for any major roadway that connects two major locations, so he's likely not in the wrong if he were to call that road a highway.
Your guess down in the comments, and remember that you can always edit your comments after I reveal the answer. Make yourselves look smarter, just saying. Also, while you're down there in the comments making your guess, be sure to take a minute to support our sponsor for today's episode, us, Threequel. Okay, so did that shilling give you enough time to make your guess as far as how long the lines in the highway are? Well, now it's finally time for that answer. Okay, so scientific surveys have shown that most people estimate that those lines are about 2 feet in length, when in actuality they're 5 times that length. They're 10 feet, 30 feet separating each individual line.
Hey, wait a minute. You were asking them to guess the length of the line, not the length between the lines. Make up your mind, MatPat.
He gave the length between the lines because he would later use them to estimate how far Sonic was running in the trailer. He wasn't flipping between the lines themselves and the distance between said lines. Quit stretching for arguments.
You see, the trailer ends with an epic scene of Sonic standing still while Jim Carrey, I refuse to call a man who would allow this,
You're basic.
Dr. Robotnik, while Jim Carrey fires off a salvo of rockets from his attack drones. Now, obviously, this whole thing is happening in bullet time, or let's say Sonic vision, where time is slowed down to Sonic's perspective of the world. So he must be fast because the rockets are literally standing still. And Sonic uses this opportunity to redirect the missiles and bullets away from him and towards the ground?
Did it ever occur to you that this is just a gag? Hell, it may not even end up in the final movie. Some trailers have exclusive gags or lines that won't be in the movie.
Okay, so I have a bit of a funny story for this point. So when I originally watched this, I was under the impression that she was talking about the part where Sonic was redirecting the bullets towards the ground, which doesn't work because MatPat himself was making a gag for this scene.
Sonic, there are people down there! Jeez! You not only look like a monster, but you act like one too.
However, somebody that checked the script for me, by the way, thanks Bennett for noting this, said that he felt the point was directed towards the slow motion scene in its entirety, and even with this, her point still falls flat with this regard. One, even if it is a gag, that doesn't mean it can't be used to back up a theory if it somehow supports it. Two, it might not be in the final movie, meaning there's no way of proving it won't be in the final movie, and this is a baseless assumption at best. And if I can tack on an additional point, going back to both mine and Bennett's confusion, it'd probably be for the best if you try to explain yourself a bit better in these situations. You play the part out in its entirety, which is fine,
but stop briefly before MatPat goes on to something else and explain your point as basic as possible. When you have a lot going on in a video at once, it wouldn't hurt to at least be a bit in-depth with describing your points so that your viewer at least has a better time at catching what you're trying to say.
Knowing that Sonic is the size of a small child in the movie...
Do you have your child in that bag? Well, technically, according to the Sonic X anime and the official Sonic Wiki, modern Sonic is 3'3", so that isn't entirely wrong, even if the scene you're referring to has some very uncomfortable implications.
Actually estimate the size of each of these drones to be similar to this existing spherical drone that's 88 centimeters in diameter, or about 2.8 feet.
And how exactly did you come to this conclusion? Well, yes, you could argue that you took modern Sonic's usual height into account, but since we don't know if this Sonic is still 3'3", you are merely guessing the size of that robot.
Yes, almost as if he's, well, theorizing, as in, not absolute fact. First off, movie Sonic, as MatPat pointed out, is still rather small, so it's not too far off to say he's at least close to 3'3". Even if he's not absolute, he's still close. Second, he even goes as far as to call what he claims as the drone's height an estimation, meaning it may not be exact, but pretty close based off the information he has.
You see, that roadway scene from a while back is a bit misleading. Sure, I calculated that he's running at 1,200 miles an hour, but he also creates a blast that apparently knocks out the electricity for the entire North American continent. It seems like what he's created there should be a sonic boom, since, you know, he's traveling faster than the speed of sound, but that is not a sonic boom. This is a sonic boom.
Was that supposed to be funny?
Oh no, Booba Stare! What the fuck is this?
Sonic booms wouldn't create an explosion that results in a nationwide blackout. So, is this just movie logic? Bad movie science? No, actually. The trailer isn't wrong here. And the real explanation for what's going on actually explains some of the weird design decisions that they made with Sonic. You see, that blast is most likely an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse.
Okay, no. An EMP, or EMP, typically involves magnetism, and last time I checked, Sonic isn't magnetic. Yes, he could generate electricity via the friction I mentioned before, generating static electricity, but not magnetism.
No, you're still off the mark on this. Literally one of the main causes of an EMP is indeed electricity. For example, if a strong bolt of lightning were to strike, it could easily overload circuits in a civilized area and, therefore, cause a small blackout. With this, what causes these blackouts aren't necessarily the electricity or lightning themselves, but the overabundance of electromagnetic radiation that could be created from them. MatPat himself even goes on to explain how Sonic could potentially be creating an overabundance in gamma rays from the electricity being created from his body, which, again, is not created by friction.
And with that, I go into my final thoughts. Ugh. MatPat, you have a really bad habit of jumping onto bandwagons and making theories on what's popular, even if it makes no sense. And making a theory after only one trailer does not help. If you want an example of a trailer theory done right, go watch the Sega Scourge's theory on Infinite. And as for you, MatPat, either wait until at least a second trailer drops or wait until the movie is out. Otherwise, this wasn't a film theory. It was a trailer theory.
And that's bad, for whatever reason. Even if it's just one trailer, it still showed enough from the movie to give a basic idea of what's going on. Yeah, sure, something could be changed or added in the future, but one, there's no way of knowing that will happen, and two, there's still enough shown to get a basic idea of the movie. At worst, it would just make the theory debunked, and even with that, oh well, not all theories are going to be right in the end.